Hello besties, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tori if you're new, and we're talking about 10 5-star predictions that I have for 2025. There's a little bit of a mix on this list, but it's mostly fantasy romance. Who is surprised? Literally no one. And I did try to keep this list so that it's not new releases. I think there's one, maybe two new releases on this list, but I do have a whole separate like most anticipated releases for 2025 video that is upcoming. So I tried to keep this a little bit separate. There's a lot of Kindle Unlimited fantasy romance on here. I also tried to keep it with books that haven't had as much like hype lately that I've heard of and I'm interested in. So hopefully you find some good recs on here that you haven't heard of before. The first book I want to talk about is by Rita, who is an author I read towards the end of this year in 2024. I read her Peaches and Honey duology and absolutely fell in love with not only her writing, but her characters and the way she tells a love story. This book seems very Peaches and Honey coded, except it has to do with vampires. It's called Everlong. The cover is beautiful, by the way. I might be ordering a physical edition of this. Our main character is Lily. She doesn't remember her death, but she does remember her reawakening. She spends her nights at a park and she writes about the things that she finds like left behind or littered in the park. An interesting line in the description of this book, it says, "As the decades pass and the city skyline grows, her body remains immortal and unchanged even as her mind decays." And then she ends up meeting Sam de la Cruz, who it makes it sound like shows up and is more of like a light in her now immortal life. I think that she's struggling with immortality and Sam might be her salvation. Months pass and their relationship grows, but her mind and memories continue to fade until Sam realizes that the strange, lonely woman he's come to love is more than what she seems. It says it's about love, loss, and what it means to live forever. I like when stories have a little bit more depth to them and explore different emotions, and this one sounds like it's going to be emo, like it's going to be sad, but also a really interesting take on a vampire who like isn't happy with their immortality. These next two I think are a little bit more like softballs and you've probably heard of them before. Paladin's Hope by T. Kingfisher. This is the third book in the Saints of Steel series. I have read the first two. I've read Sword Heart. I absolutely love these books. They're very lighthearted. They are so freaking funny. Like T. Kingfisher, it's crazy that this author can write horror that just absolutely creeps you out, but then also write romances that just have you giggling and kicking your feet. And I have loved all of her characters so far. I'm pretty sure all of these have been 5-star books for me, so this is kind of a softball for myself that if none of these other books are 5-star reads, I know that Paladin's Hope is going to be a 5-star. I'm very interested because at the last book, we kind of came to a conclusion with the plot story that was going on in the first two. Piper is our main character who is a doctor that works with the dead. He inspects dead bodies to determine the cause of death. One day he's called to the river to determine the causes of death for multiple mysterious bodies mangled by some unknown force, and he meets Galen, who is a paladin. Galen also is no longer entirely sane. The Saints of Steel, when their god ended up dying, which no one knew could happen, none of them, like, they all have their own troubles and they're all a bit of like tortured souls, but for some it really impacted their mental state and their sanity a little bit more than others. When the two men and a brave Knoll constable are drawn into the web of the mysterious killer, it's Galen's job to protect Piper from the traps that await them. But Galen is nervous that he might be more of a threat than what's happening around them. That seems to be a theme in a lot of these Saints of Steel books because they're kind of struggling with their, we'll just call it mental health, because I think that that's an okay term to use for what they're going through, because it's sort of like grief, but it's impacted them in a much more serious way that I won't talk about, but they are so hard on themselves and I love how that like shows up through their characters. I'm so excited for this one. Glow of the Everflame by Penn Cole is on this list. I was nervous to put this one on, however, I think having this book on my 5-star predictions will encourage me to continue with this series. This is a series that I know everyone at this point has binge read and I still have not. I read the first book. I think the hype got to me. Like, I always get really nervous to read overly hyped books. I read Spark. I liked it, but it hit pretty like mid for me. I gave it a 3-star. And then I was nervous to continue on, but everyone has told me the first book is just a lot of setup. It's almost like a prequel. And so I've heard that the second book is where we really get into the romance. At least we get to like meet and get a little bit more exposure to who the love interest is going to be. We just get a little bit more. And so I'm excited to continue with this series. I think it will be worth it. I hope I catch the binge bug that everyone else got when they read this series, but after the first one, I'm not gonna lie, I got really nervous. Everyone has said that Glow is one of their favorites of the series so far, and that even if they gave the first book 3 stars, that the second book was still so much better. This is my one newer release on this list, and it is Wild and Wrangled by Lila Sage. This is supposed to come out in April of 2025, I believe. I had to put this on here because I love these books. Lila Sage is just like my top tier #1. I love her cowboy romances so freaking much. And this one, we have some very interesting characters that we're following. We're following Cam and Dusty. Dusty seems like the sweetest boy ever. He has been pining after Cam for so freaking long. Cam is Gus's baby mama from Lost and Lassoed. So Gus from Lost and Lassoed and Cam had a baby. They decided to co-parent and not like be together. So this is Cam's romance with Dusty. And we also got to meet Dusty in Lost and Lassoed as well. I think it's going to be absolutely stunning. I love a man who is just pining after a girl for literally so long. I think it's gonna be so juicy. This next one is a desert fantasy romance. I love desert books. Ever since I read Ember in the Ashes, desert books just always hit so hard for me. And so when I read the description of this one, I have to try it. And it's a 5-star prediction, so we'll see how well I know myself with this entire list, but this one specifically. But it's pitched as a slow burn enemies to lovers for fans of Carissa Broadbent and LJ Andrews. We have an exile named Kira. She's struggling to survive. She's forced to rob anyone that she kind of like passes by in the desert when one day she steals from the wrong man. His name is Viper and he's very dangerous. He's a vicious masked warrior. There is something about a masked man, y'all. If they tell me that we never get to see his face in this book, I'm gonna be such a happy girl. But when he has his hand around her throat, he caught her stealing, it awakens an ancient magic in her. She uses that to escape him, and then she has to learn how to control this newfound magic. Viper serves the magic of the desert, and then these two ended up pitted against each other. Kira is trying to use her magic to protect the great city of Kelvedon, and Viper is trying to protect his home, which I think is the desert, the Balin Desert. So he's building an army and doing everything he can to destroy this city that Kira is trying to protect. We will see how it goes. I've never heard of this author. This is called, it would help if I told you the name of the book, even though the cover is on screen. Blood of the Sands by S.C. Grayson. I've never heard of this author before, but I'm intrigued. Next up is a book that I will be so honest, I don't know too much about. I read some of the summary and it was enough for me. So I'm gonna tell you what I read and leave it at that, and we'll see how good it is. This is The Consulate by Alison Carr Wacher. We have an immortal warrior and a necromancer that burned her house down. We have missing swords that I am assuming are some type of artifact or have some power to them. We have 3 underworld dynasties that are at odds with the mundane world, and there's a heist. Like, come on. When I saw underworld and necromancer and warrior, I was sad. I'm like, honestly, you could tell me nothing else about this book and I will probably still read it. Basically, the necromancers are looking for these lost swords because these swords gave them their power. But Ember is our main character and she is our immortal warrior. These like necromancer people and Ember are both trying to get these swords that are going to be at this like national gala. And so they're staging a heist to get these swords. Ember must choose work with the man who burned her house to the ground and ruined her life, or do this on her own and risk falling into useless obscurity. Find out which she chooses. There's ghosts, there's a mysterious underworld, and there's lots of romance. And I can't wait to read it. Let's throw in another popular one. Y'all are gonna know this book. y'all have probably already read this book, and I haven't because I got really scared about hyped books, and that is Quicksilver by Callie Hart. I was almost waiting for like the second book in this series to come out because lately I've been reading so many series that only the first book is out, and then I end up losing my momentum with the series, but I don't think I can wait any longer. Like, I need to know what everyone is screaming about. I think so many people have told me that I'm going to love this book, so Quicksilver's on this list. I'm not going to go through the summary for this one because I feel as though I am the only one who hasn't read this book, but I'm really looking forward to it. Then we have Threaded by Tay Rose. Our main character is Mariah. She lives in a world where not having magic is a good thing. If you do have magic, it means servitude. She gets a summons from the queen to go to the palace. She gets involved in the cutthroat world of politics, which this setup sort of reminds me of A Kiss of Iron. I absolutely love the Shadows of Tenebra's Court series. She's forced to come to terms with her new position, but magic awakens in her when she is in this new setting amongst these new people. Then as her love interest, we have a brooding and disgraced royal heir. He is selected to serve in her sworn guard, but he inexplicably hates her, and yet he can't seem to stay away. This is like one of my favorite setups. Relationships blossom, schemes are unearthed, and gods are awakened, yet her heart may be the biggest threat of all. Love is a weakness, but will fate weave a different thread? It says for fans of the Bridge Kingdom and Plated Prisoner series and Serpent in the Wings of Night. I don't know how that fits in here because it doesn't seem like there's vampires, but Threaded by Tay Rose, and the second book is out in the series as well, called Scourged. And then the last two on this list are hopefully ones you haven't heard of. They don't have a lot of reads on Goodreads, but when I first read the summaries for them, they like captured me right away. So very unsure if they will be 5-star reads, but we're throwing them in here because they have the potential to be. The first one is called Tenderly I Am Devoured by Lyndall Clipstone. It says for fans of Saltburn, For the Wolf, House of Hollow. How crazy is that? It is a monstrously gothic romantasy. One thing about me, I love a gothic romantasy. I can't help myself. It's in my DNA. A young woman must bind herself to the dangerous chthonic demon with the help of the son of a rival family to save her family's legacy and herself from ruin. Binding yourself to a demon is never a good idea, and yet I eat up the stories where they are bound to a demon. Our main character is 18 years old and her name is Lacrimosa. She's also been expelled from her prestigious boarding school. She returns home to find that her family is on the verge of financial ruin. Desperate to save them, she accepts a marriage of convenience to Therion, the chthonic god worshipped by Lark's isolated coastal hometown, with hopes that the hedonistic ritual will repair the connection between Lark and her bridegroom. Instead, they draw the ire of something much darker, which seeks to destroy Therion and Lark as well. Please, please. If the writing style is good on this one, I am not gonna shut up about it. And then the final book on this list is called A Cruel Thirst by Angela Montoya. I need a good vampire book, you know what I mean? I feel like any 5-star prediction list is not complete without a solid vampire book. We do have two, because we also have the R. Rada vampire book. But this one is about a vampire and a vampire hunter. Carolina is our female main character, and she is the vampire hunter. Her family is pushing her to get married because they don't see her being a vampire hunter as like a long-term thing for her. They might also be like leaning more on the traditional side of, you know, family structures and whatever. And she says, no, I'm gonna prove to everybody that I am going to be a better vampire hunter than I would ever be a wife. When she runs into, I don't know what a sediento is. When she runs into a sediento that is not only handsome but kind, she questions everything. His name is Lalo Villalobos, and he doesn't act on impulses. This time he will though, I bet you. He had a lot of responsibility on his shoulders. He was taking care of his family, but then he gets turned into a sediento, which I think is what they're calling vampires in this book. When he turns into a sediento, he must flee the city, taking lives as he goes, where he's venturing to where he thinks that the first vampire was made, and he's hoping to find answers to his curse. But he runs into a beautiful woman who would gladly stake him. Fortunately for them both, they share a common interest. They want to defeat these evil beings. Nothing like a monster and a monster hunter romance. So those are my 10 5-star predictions for 2025, friends. Please share if you have your 5-star predictions list already set for 2025. Please share those down below. I would love to look at yours. I would love to add more to my list, but if any of these sound interesting to you, please let me know in the comments down below as well. I will catch you down there, and I will see you in my next one, friends. Toodles!